in as a startup village. Its goal is to connect startup villages and other key stakeholders to develop and test sustainable food system innovations using circular bioeconomy strategies. So the overall aim is to make our food systems more sustainable and better for the environment. A big part of the project is collaboration and knowledge sharing. That's why we're here today. So startup villages contribute by showcasing solutions, raising awareness and learning from each other. That's where initiatives like this webinar series come in, along with our Food Community of Practice online platform. Our online platform is super important. So there's toolkits and publications and general networking with other like-minded individuals. So the platform is a space where communities, researchers and startups can connect, exchange your knowledge and access a growing library of tools, discussions and best practices. You can join using the QR code on the screen now, and my colleague Amy will also share the link in the comments for anyone in a moment who prefers to click through directly. Lastly, Amy will be posting a link in the comments for a survey. If you could please fill it out with your honest feedback after the webinar, we would really appreciate it, as it would really help us going forward into future webinars. It is also used for an analysis in the background of the project. We are trying to map basically lack of resources in economic, legal factors, technological, everything. So your feedback is super important for us, just to be able to gather all of that information and see where we can help going forward in the future. So QR code for this will also be displayed at the end of the webinar should anyone need it. So finally, I'm going to introduce our three fantastic speakers joining us today. So firstly, we have Michael Gleeson from Ballyhar Organic Farm. If we could, yeah, so and then we have so Michael is a native of West Clare, an organic farmer and breeder of pedigree Kerry cattle in Ballyhar, just north of Killarney. So under the name Ballyhar Organic Farm, he produces Kerry organic roast veal and beef, sells pedigree breeding stock to other breeders, and he's produced organic oats and barley, pasteurized organic chickens, and has experimented with a range of dairy products. He also recently installed solar panels and established a 14-acre agroforestry plantation to reduce the farm's carbon print. I'm very excited to hear all about this. Michael also does rural and community development consultancy and works part-time as the social enterprise advisor for Limerick City Partnership. Michael, thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to hand over to you, and you can work away.
Right on. I'm just going to attempt to share my screen here. It's been a long time.
No bother.
It's been a long time since I've used now I think that should do it. It's just a folder of photographs here.
Yeah.
So
so we're just seeing we're still seeing the folder file, Michael, just to be conscious.
Okay, well look, I'll just flick through the flick through the photographs here if you guys can see that much. That's okay. So I suppose Ballyhar Farm Produce, or I would have been known as Ballyhar Farm Produce, but everyone was calling me Ballyhar Organic Farm, so I said I'd just go with it and accept it inevitable that this is really our name. So I just have a few images up here of what I'm doing, because as they say, a picture tells 1,000 words, and anyone that knows me knows I have no trouble keeping talking, but at the same time the photographs will show you a little more about what I'm doing here. So I suppose my core enterprise here on the farm is I heard of absolutely beautiful organic Kerry cows. We've been organic since we took over the farm in 2013, and I suppose I said I wanted to do something a little bit unique and a little bit different, and I started looking about. I'd always had an interest in the conservation of rare breeds. I have a background in environmental studies myself. I have a degree from the University of Aberdeen in countryside and environmental management, which is kind of a hybrid between environmental science and rural development, I suppose, to summarize it. So I came down to County Kerry. I'm from near Milltown Malbay in West Clare myself, but a beautiful Kerry woman came up to County Clare and collared me and brought her back down here with her. So here I am. So we took over the farm in 2012, I think it was actually, and We went organic immediately because that would be my, I suppose I felt I wanted to go on as start as I meant to continue. And I started assembling a herd of Kerry cows. I went down to see Miss Hilliard's famous herd down in Killarney, and uh, it kind of cast a spell over me, I suppose is the best way of putting it. So I started putting together a herd of organic Kerry cows. The first few cows I got, I was actually doing a business plan for Gubeen Farm down in West Cork. And instead of the last payment for the contract I was doing with them, I came home with three Kerry cows in a cow box, and my wife was expecting a check, but she got three Kerry cows instead. That was an interesting moment. But anyway, as you can see there, we're just overlooking the McGillicuddy Reeks, looking out over South and West Kerry. We have a lovely perch here on the side of the hill in Ballyhar. And as I said, the cows are my pride and joy. The pictures are a little small now, but I was hoping to be able to show you them in a little. I might just open it up and see, can I re-share that?
Do sure.
There we go. I think that'll probably work better.
Still, oh, there we go. We have it. We have it.
Yeah,
You're up and running.
Me and my girls. So that's a picture that back of Ballyhar Church. That's exactly where we are. That cow there is called Patsy. She's one of my oldest cows, and that big brute of an animal that's drinking her milk is an example of one of the weanling bulls that we process here on the farm for organic rosé veal. So they're not little small calves, which is what I get accused of sometimes, and they have the best possible life. That animal would go up a loading door and go over to Mike Miller's and Fossa and be processed in the most humane way possible, which is the way we want it to be for them. That's just another example. She's an absolutely beautiful cow. I just couldn't resist showing you a picture of her. And then these are some of the weaning heifers that I would be selling. And I suppose the reality is that with the acres and gloss schemes you can get a payment of up to 200 euros per pedigree rare breed cow that you have on the farm, and it has increased the demand obviously for rare breed livestock. There are Kerrys, Dexters, Drimmen, and Irish Moyle, including some sheep breeds and things that I don't know too much about, I'll be honest. I was also for about 5 years, I produced pastured organic chickens, and I would have sold them to the 3 organic shops here in the county, and I would have also sold to the urban co-op in Limerick, and I would have sold to a number of high-end restaurants and hotels and things like that. But I discontinued that around the time the Ukraine war doubled the price of feed. And I haven't gone back at it yet. Two main factors, I suppose. It was the price of feed, which really diminished my margins, and the second factor was, I suppose, trying to get help to do work like that. It's a very long, tough day processing chickens, and I was doing it here in a unit here on the farm myself. But I decided I'd park that for now, and I haven't gone back at it yet. These are the chickens I was producing. They had quite a loyal local following. I also experimented with a range of organic dairy products. I was milking the cows for a while, and I produced milk in glass bottles. I collaborated with Ballymac Dairy up near Tralee to do that. I was making cheese. I tried making yogurt. I did a lot of experimentation. But again, that was another project that I tried and left when I started working off the farm. I suppose I had to accept there was only one of me. So I don't have an awful lot of equipment on the farm. You can see there, that's the one piece of equipment that I use a lot, and that's a topper. Because I'm organic and because about half of the farm has a tendency to be a bit rushy, I generally use this machine to top the rushes, and if you can get after the rushes maybe once or twice in the year, you'll keep them under control. But I suppose I have a circular economy sort of angle on this as well, because that's us turning a field of rushes, cut them, come back about 3 weeks later, and turn them and try and harvest them. And we got 50. I use about 50 bales of rushy hay every year as bedding for my cows. So that's an example of my sheds. So you have a slatted house with bedding at the back. That's part of the organic regulation. And the slats, the feeding passages out here at the front. And the cows have great comfort when they're inside there. They're dry, they're warm, they're content as anything. They're in there at the moment. I'm hoping to get them out of there fairly soon again, but they just went in there in the bad weather. But and I suppose that's ultimately what it turns into. That's compost that we're making in kind of larger windrows. The first row has been there a little bit longer than the second row. We clean that out twice a year, and we use that for farmyard manure. That and the slurry are one of my main sources of nutrition on the farm. Other thing I do as well is I produce organic oats. I have in the past produced organic barley as well for a local distillery, but unfortunately some of the local distilleries haven't thrived with general geopolitical problems that are going on at the moment. But I would have fed those oats to the chickens and would have harvested the straw for bedding as well. This year, unfortunately, I did get to harvest the oats, but unfortunately, the bedding didn't work out. It's been raining since the day after that we harvested those oats, so we didn't get to save the bedding. So sell it to other farmers in half-ton bags. Use a good bit of it myself. I suppose what I've used it for is a way of kind of refreshing ground and reseeding ground and getting a bit of a cash input to kind of cover the cost of it. So it's kind of to balance things out. At the moment, I suppose one of my big projects is not a great photograph, but a couple of the big projects I have on the farm that I would have been preoccupied with this spring was a 14-acre agroforestry plantation, which went into a big marginal field that would be quite soft in places. You can see there just in the foreground there I would have planted a lot of hedging as well there. I think there's hedging struggling to peep its head out there in places. Would have done a lot of hedging, about 700 meters of hedging. We have planted about 2,000 trees, various varieties, mainly oak, cherry, Scots pine, alder, and birch would be the main species of tree. But we also planted about 340 odd fruit trees in the drier places down there. So the idea behind that is that in time to come we'll be harvesting organic fruit and selling it to the outlets that we have here in the county, and elsewhere. So mainly apples, pears, plums, hazelnuts, and cherries. Other big project we had this spring was building a new road. Life goes on, and you're organic, but you don't stop trying to move forward. And we had to build a pretty big new road, but we got an organic TAMS grant for that of 60% of the cost of it. So that was very useful. And then the other big thing we did this spring was we put solar panels up on the shed. We put 19 solar panels on the shed, and that again was organic TAMS, and got a decent grant for that. Pro Solar down in Kilmare were the company that installed the solar panels for us. And I suppose to go back through everything, we're always trying something different. We're always looking for new opportunities, and we're not afraid to try different things. So I'm just trying to stop the share there now again. No. So yeah, so that's a very kind of a whistle-stop tour of what we're doing here in Ballyhar Organic Farm. As they say, the farm is a 70-acre approximately holding, and I suppose our approach to it here has been to try and maximize the income from various schemes, and from I would have studied environmental science in college, and I would be very strong on the fact that if you're providing environmental services and you're providing biodiversity and you're conserving rare breeds, that there should be a reward for doing that. And I am in the acre scheme. I am getting a certain amount of money for keeping rare breeds. We also have the agroforestry. We've put in hedging. We've put in little corners of trees. We've put in a couple of orchards on the farm. Um, Up in County Clare, we'd call a little corner where you don't farm and it's gone wild. We call it a hare's corner, and we've several hare's corners on the farm as well, which kind of provide little habitats, I suppose, throughout the farm. So it's I suppose the model here is that we're doing things as as well as we can, and the people who buy produce from us, I suppose, are very bought into the way we farm here. And I would include Mana Organic Shop in Tralee would be one of our best customers. The organic shop in Milltown would be a great customer of ours as well. We would have sold to Shop Ailing out in Vintry, would have sold to the Pantry in Kinmare, and we've a lot of private customers would buy a little 5 kilo freezer box from us as well. And we've a couple of other customers, loyal customers that we ship stuff to as well, but I don't have a huge volume of stuff, so I tend to try and
Mhm.
keep it as local as possible. And I have lots of people who call to the farm to collect a box of meat, and we've great old chats, and it's very sociable. So, um, yeah, so that's kind of us.
Thank you so much for sharing everything that you do, Michael. Like it's very cool to see how you put it across not only the farm and the livestock, but also across the agroforestry. And I suppose just on that, like, could you share how that contributes to both biodiversity and your carbon footprint reduction?
Well, I suppose an interesting thing has been happening. We've installed, as I said, I'll just digress a little bit because we've installed solar panels at the start of the
Mm.
year, and anyone who's recently installed solar panels will bore the hell off you showing you the app on their phone and how much it's generating, and how good the sunshine is. But one of the very interesting things that's on there is that it tells you what the equivalent number of trees, the carbon equivalent of number of trees that you've saved in terms of energy. And my my ESB bill would have been around €500 every 2 months. And basically the last two ESB bills, now I know it's just past the summer, the last two ESB bills were in the minus. I think it was minus 28 and minus 14 were my last two ESB bills. So more or less my ESB usage is gone over the summer by the strength of having solar panels. But the the app tells me that that's the equivalent of 1.5 trees
Okay.
in terms of solar saving or carbon saving. So I suppose between the hedging and the agroforestry and a couple of hares corners and bits of orchards and things, we've put in about 3,000 trees on the farm. So I would have to speculate that the agroforestry is way outperforming the solar panels, and I think solar panels are seen as a great new technology, and there is a lot of technology out there and new technology being developed. But it has to be said that planting a tree is a grand, simple, old-fashioned way
Yeah.
of lowering your carbon footprint. Um, Now, I suppose in long-term view, it would be great if we could, I suppose, if there was some sort of mechanism where someone like me could trade that carbon and get some sort of other income stream. Now, the scheme itself provides, I think it's just around 900, um, just around €900 per hectare, or sorry, just around €9,000 per hectare in an establishment grant, and just over €900 per hectare per year for 10 years an annual premium for having agroforestry. This is under the FP8 agroforestry scheme. And I suppose the beauty of that is that it covers obviously the cost of establishment, because these trees and all the related infrastructure doesn't come for free. And there's a lot of work involved in getting it done, because the field has to be fully fenced off and everything has to be done right, and each tree has to be individually protected from livestock and everything. But it covers the cost of doing it, and it gives you a sustainable tax-free income for the 10 years while the agroforestry is becoming established. And I suppose my hope is that the plantation will start to yield, I suppose, initially firewood, hoping in the next couple of years it'll be yielding fruit and nuts for sale as well as everything else. Um, and the other thing is that for the farmer who doesn't want to give up on farming and doesn't want to give up on livestock, it's a way of getting into trees and forestry where you don't have to give. My cows were down there grazing between the rows for about a month this year. And I actually, as I said, they're gone into the shed because things got a little bit mucky there. But you know, it's a way of getting involved in trees without actually giving up on having livestock. And the layout of the plantation is that the rows of trees are 8 meters apart, giving you enough room to have livestock in there and also to operate machinery. And then each individual tree is 3 meters apart. And the initial criteria is you put in 400 trees per hectare. And after the 10 years, you have to maintain at least 80 trees per hectare. So you can thin out the trees that maybe aren't thriving, or the species that maybe you're not so keen on. So obviously your gold standard would be your cherry and your oak, but like birch and alder are better to grow on wet ground, which I have a good bit of. So it's about balancing. I have some Scots pine in there as well, which would be a nice tree when the time comes as well. But yeah.
It's fantastic to see how passionate you are, and the fact that you have managed to incorporate circularity across your entire farm by the sounds of it. I'm going to just open it out to everyone else on the call and see, does anyone have any questions? The Hare's Corner. Can you tell us the name of the shops where you can buy your produce again, please? I think Manna and Tralee was one of them anyway.
Yeah, well, just at the moment, it's just in Manna and Tralee they buy our produce. But if you because most of the other shops were buying the chickens from us at the time. But I suppose Kerry is very well served, I think, by organic shops and organic outlets, because a lot of other counties and other places don't have very little in terms of outlets or places to buy organic produce. You know, and the shops that you have would be Manna, obviously would be the main one from my point of view at the moment. You also have Milltown Organic Store. You have the Pantry in Kinmare. You have Shuppy Ling out in Vintry. They'd be the main ones that I would have dealt with. And also the Urban Co-op up in Limerick would have bought a bit of stuff off me as well. And Sonus in Newcastle West was another customer of mine at the time. But if you're looking for a freezer box of meat, ballyhar.com is our website. I was amazed it was still there, but I said I'd take it when it was.
I'm making a note of this right now, because I will say it is, I know just from speaking to other people in the community from this project and things like that, it is very hard to sell consumer to consumer, or business to consumer, rather than business to business as a wholesale. So the fact that you have loyal, I suppose, local consumers that want to buy off you and keep that going is absolutely fantastic. And I would imagine a few more consumers following our chat here today. Michael, thank you so much for your time. Please feel free to put your contact in the Zoom chat so people can link with you and we can grow the community.
No problem.
Thank you so much. I am going to start sharing my screen now and introduce our next speaker. So we have, I'm just going to wait a second now because it's still showing up the Michael's. So it's just sharing a second. You could share our own slides. Excellent, thanks very much. So next up we have Kieran Cotter, who is the project officer at Knocknagoshel. He is the project officer at Knocknagoshel Environmental and Angling Association. So Kieran has done a pre-recorded session with our colleague Christopher Barrett. Kieran will showcase the community-led efforts to protect and enhance local river systems and surrounding landscapes in North Kerry. So this session highlights how small determined groups can make a big impact on local biodiversity and environmental stewardship. So we're going to go ahead and play the pre-record, which will be followed by our third speaker thereafter.
Hello everyone, and you're very welcome to our next session as part of this webinar for Food Community of Practice here from the RDI Hub in County Kerry in Ireland. We are absolutely delighted to welcome our next speaker, and our next speaker's name is Kieran Cotter. Kieran is the project officer at the Knocknagoshel Environmental and Angling Association. He is passionate about rural regeneration and community building, and his role of project officer has him overseeing initiatives which would have significant influence on the community and local ecology. He's also the chairperson of his local Tidy Towns group and helps maintain the community garden, and is passionate about Irish vernacular architecture. Kieran, you're very welcome to the webinar today. I'm going to let you take over now. I think it's a really exciting project that you're working on, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Chris. So, yeah, thanks for the introduction. As Chris mentioned, I am the project officer for the Knocknagoshel Environmental and Angling Association. And the association has been around since the late 1970s. And primarily it's been an angling club, but we've also done some community development projects as well. Recently, in 2025, we have been reinvigorated by Law Pro catchment sport funding, which funds my role as project officer. And one of our projects that I'm going to talk about today is the Knocknagoshel Village Integrated Constructed Wetland, which is a community-led solution to rural development. And what I really admire about the work that you were doing in this project is, the bottom-up approach of how communities can, be involved in the circular economy and really, influence their impact. And Knocknagoshel Village itself has seen some, negative decline recently. Young people immigrating. We've had our local shop close, things like that. And one might say, why don't you just build more houses and get more people, and it would take care of itself. But unfortunately, it's not that simple. Like a lot of villages in rural Ireland, it's the infrastructure around housing that is really the issue. And our major barrier to development is the wastewater infrastructure. Just some background on, our wastewater challenges. It's essentially the same system that's there since the 1950s. It is a combined sewer system, which, essentially any rainwater from the buildings coming off of roads all enters the same pipes that you flush your toilets with, and this has significant impact on our wastewater system. So the photo there shows that there's pollution ongoing in our river, which is really hard to watch and hard to understand. It's a real ball of string where we're trying to unknot here the wastewater system. But essentially, too much rainwater overloads the wastewater system and just gets diverted straight into the river. We have been liaising with the County Council, Roads Department on some interventions we can do. You know, we're really starting kind of from scratch. Again, like I said, this bottom-up approach that I think you guys can relate to. And look, we have some progress with the council, but you know, it is a ball of string we are trying to unknot. But largely our objective is for Knocknagoshel to be a champion for community environmental action. And I think you can align with that as well, with what you're doing with circular economy and, you know, rural communities and things like that. You know, last year, all of this kind of led us to creating a community plan. And that was professionally facilitated by Paul O'Raw, who was the community planner. And we had an average of about 100 people at each meeting, which for a population of 600 or 700 is very good. And essentially we created an action plan, you know, a list of actions that we were going to take in the next 5 years that would make Knocknagoshel more vibrant, more attractive place to live, and, you know, to future-proof the community. And one of the actions that we proposed was for the wastewater infrastructure to be adequate for a future population. So we had to start somewhere, and this led us to Phelim Harty of FH Wetland Systems. He is one of Ireland's leading nature-based solution, holistic approach wetland experts. He's worked with community groups in the past, and in 2024 we created the Knocknagoshel Water Management Report, and that was generally an overview of, you know, who knows where our water flows in Knocknagoshel, and like that it gave us a really good insight into the challenges we have and some approaches we can take. You can see in the photo there's members of the council and members of the community as well when Phelim visited last September. And, you know, Phelim educated us on integrated constructed wetlands and what, you know, rural communities like ourselves can do to better our water quality situation. This year then we've hired Vesi Environmental, who is they're an environmental consultant, to design the nature-based solution wastewater system for the village. And essentially the wastewater flows, you know, downhill. It's all gravity fed. There's no mechanical or electrical pumping, things like that. This makes it cheaper to construct as well. And essentially the wastewater flows from cell 1 into cell 2, cell 3, and eventually discharging into the river. Each of these cells are essentially wetland ponds, so large scale ponds with wetland plants growing in them, and the plants absorb the nutrients from the wastewater, cleaning it up before it flows into the river. We've been working with the Irish Forestry Unit Trust, who are the landowners, where the wastewater treatment plant is, and they've been pretty good to deal with so far. They themselves are a big organization. They have corporate social governance objectives, which definitely aligns with what we want to do. And, you know, like that, some of the engagements we've had lately between stakeholders like the Kerry County Council, the landowner, local residents as well, which is very important. Funding streams, and Ishka Éireann as well, Vesi Environmental. And we're hoping that, you know, we can get planning permission and eventually in 2026, 2027, see the integrated constructed wetland being built. And as I said before, it is really the major barrier to development in Knocknagoshel. You know, if you have adequate wastewater, you can build more houses and essentially reach our objective of, like I said earlier, Knocknagoshel being a champion for community environmental action. And yeah, look, I'm really glad you decided to have me on the webinar today. We're both definitely on the ground in communities doing this bottom-up approach, and you know, I think there'll be a lot of knowledge both of us could share, and yeah, we can take it from there. So I just want to thank you for hearing me out in this project, and yeah, if you want to keep up to date with what we're doing in Knocknagoshel, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram, and hopefully you'll be hearing about us soon. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Kieran. So really appreciate that interesting presentation on the wetland. So we're going to spend the next about 10 minutes just in a Q&A type format, and I have a couple of questions that I want to ask about this project. So it's a really interesting concept that there's sewage going into the water because it's just not fit for purpose, the water management in the village. And this idea of having nature-based solution of having an integrated constructed wetland to manage all of that is really fascinating. Do you think that's something that could be applicable to areas outside of Ireland, for example, across Europe in other similar smaller villages?
Definitely. I think nature-based solutions, you know, is really in the remit of climate adaptation, and you see it all over the world. There's nature-based solutions like this in many other countries where, you know, the principles are the same. Gravity flows, you use plants to absorb nutrients, and nature takes care of a lot of it itself.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, you even spoke about smaller interventions in the village as well, that might be actions that you can take sooner rather than later. Can you speak a little bit about that? About, you know, we've got you can see you've got this kind of 3-year plan for the larger wetland. What can you do in the village very soon?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it is a challenging project. There are a lot of complications to be unknotted, but essentially on the ground, you know, holding on to as much rainwater as we can before it enters into the system is something that we're looking at immediately. And that's through, you know, bioretention swales, essentially runoff from the road, reaching a point where it can percolate through the ground, or, you know, fills up a large volume before it overflows back into the system. Anything to slow down the flow really immediately would help the system.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think it even goes back to an even more simplified concept of connecting to the gutters within the village and small reed beds. Can you speak a little bit about those kind of implementations that could be built?
Yeah, I mean, Phelim Harty in the water management report, you know, gave us a lot of insight into what we could do. Let's say there's smaller solutions like the rainwater planters. Essentially, you know, the downpipe from the building enters, it fills up a rainwater planter, which, you know, acts like a sponge, soaks up some of that rainwater from your roof, holds onto just, you know, even just for an hour or two before it gets slowly kind of filtered and discharged into the drainage network in the village. You know, there's a lot of small scale actions you can take, you know, and when they're all added together, they can be significant. Yeah, we're looking into things like that as well. You know, in the community garden, we harvest rainwater, doing a lot of that as well. You know, we're engaging with farmers as well with Farming for Water EIP. So, you know, results-based schemes where farmers can hold on to water. You know, because we are aware that we're an upland community, we're upstream from towns like Abbeyfield and Listowel, which have seen a lot of flooding. And yeah, I think we're aware that we can be part of the solution to those major problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you really hit the nail on the head there, Kieran, when you're saying that, like, you know, these elements in isolation mightn't seem like much, but when you add them all together, they can have a pretty significant impact on the flow of water, which is just a huge issue, not just in Ireland, but across Europe. I want to ask a little bit around the development of this. So this has been seen as a problem, as you said, for many years, but it took you know, the initiative of a couple of people to create a community development plan. Those facilitation sessions where you brought in somebody externally, do you feel like you got a lot of benefit from that? And again, is that something you'd recommend to other communities around Europe?
Definitely was a benefit to us, especially getting someone external, you know, someone that does not have any connections with the area, that you sit down and discuss what the challenges are. They've no agenda or no bias, especially, you know. And we had good numbers in the meetings. We really had to sit down and just come to terms with what was happening. You know, there's, you know, the way I would view it as someone in my 20s might be different to the way my parents' generation would view how the village is doing. So there was a lot of intergenerational knowledge transfer, and just you know, it would really, you don't know what you're going to get out of it until, you know, it's all part of a process. Like, you might think, yeah, you know, we need a shop and we need more housing and we need X, Y, and Z, but you have to go through the whole process really to really understand and, you know, get the full picture.
Yeah, I think, as you say, having that kind of, you know, unbiased opinion, somebody externally coming in, can be very helpful. Just on the concept of the wetland itself, those illustrations that you showed, like, they're really interesting, they're really exciting. From the perspective of managing the stormwater and having a healthier river is amazing. But that wetland itself could be a habitat for wildlife. Am I correct in saying that?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. I mean, where there's water, there's wildlife, you know, and especially we've lost a lot of wetland habitat just because of, you know, what they did in the past for progress and land reclamation and things like that. So anywhere you have wetland plants and reed beds, things like that, these are all kind of specialized ecosystems. And, you know, that's one benefit to having a nature-based solution, is that, yeah, it's meeting our needs of, you know, our development goals, but it's also, you know, nature-based solutions also help biodiversity and nature. And as well, you know, another element would be just another community space where people can go and observe nature as well.
Yeah, and, you know, in terms of getting this project off the ground, I suppose a lot of people might have seen this as a large, maybe insurmountable problem, but the process you've taken by having community planning sessions with an external facilitator, then having an external expert in nature-based solutions, that allowed you to create effectively a proposal where you could go forward to some of the state and governing bodies. Do you have any recommendations for people here that might have to be dealing with those large projects and problems, and how to kind of map it out from that perspective? Would you recommend going down the same route as you did?
Yeah, look, it is a big task, but like any big task, it is just made up of a number of smaller tasks. I mean, you have to start somewhere. Like, you know, I'm glad that Kerry County Council are, and you know, I hope all county councils are, you know, willing to talk to locals and residents, and especially elected county councillors, because they represent you within the council. You know, there are people you can talk to. So that kind of was our first port of call. You know, look, we're in a small community as well. We knew someone working in the council on this wastewater system. You know, it's all a journey. It's definitely a journey. Like, you know, you have to go through all of the different pathways, really. Let's say talking to the county council, and eventually, look, there are consultants out there. There are also other organisations out there I've met, you know, to help me with steering me on the right path, like Inland Fisheries Ireland, Law Pro, people like that, you know. So there are people you can talk to out there. You really just need to start and get going with it, because like I said earlier, it is a real ball of string you are trying to unknot. So all you have to do is start somewhere and keep plugging away with it. You know, I'm glad as well that I have you know, there's a committee behind me as well, and in the Environmental and Angling Association, that, you know, can guide you along as well. And we have a board as well, you know. So like that, you need to find the right vehicle. For a while, we were doing it through a Tidy Towns group, which just wasn't the right vehicle. So I suppose finding the right vehicle will be the first step, and then, you know, talking to your county council and other bodies that can support you. Just every bit will help.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the key takeaway there is, like, the help is out there, the support is there, and there's a bit of a domino effect when it comes to the connections. Like, one person will lead to the next, and you'll get assistance that way. Well,
Yeah.
Kieran, listen, I just want to say, on behalf of everybody here at the RDI Hub and FoodCoP, thank you so much for coming here and speaking a bit about your role as project officer, but more so about this really interesting project of the integrated constructed wetland. I think we'll be watching it very closely, and hopefully we'll have you back next year, and there'll be shovels in the ground, and we'll see a bit of concrete development on it.
Perfect. Good stuff. Thanks a million, Chris.
Great. Thanks, Kieran.
So that was a fantastic insight into the work that Kieran and his team are doing in the circular economy space. There is definitely a relatability factor there. It's a pity Kieran wasn't with us here in person, so we can ask him some questions, but we will leave his LinkedIn in the comments for anyone who would like to connect with him and reach out. And I am going to introduce our next speaker. So Ray, the development lead at Hometree. So once focused solely on his tree planting, Hometree has evolved into a wide-reaching initiative that reconnects people with nature while tackling some of Ireland's most pressing environmental challenges. So Ray will discuss their work restoring ecosystems, supporting biodiversity, and empowering communities to take climate action. Ray, thank you so much for giving your time today. By the looks of it, you are in a polytunnel.
I'm in a polytunnel. I just had to shout at someone to stop chainsawing, and there's a digger outside as well. So bear with me now. We're rough and ready.
Man.
Yeah, well, it's yeah. I'm not doing the hard work, but other people are. Fair play to them. Yeah, we've run out of office space here.
That's gas. Do you know what? It plays right into our team. So
Yeah,
all
yeah.
good, all good. I am going to hand it over to you, Ray, and you.
Am I? Yeah, I'm able to share here. So I'll go all screen, share, sugar, share, and then from beginning. Now you can see that, Fionnuala, can you?
We can see it. We can see it. All good.
Fine. So yeah, my name is Ray O'Fowlu. I'm the development lead here at Hometree Charity. We're a young charity based in Steinman in West Clare, where I suppose we were set up about 10 years ago. very much from a voluntary point of view on a local organic farm. A lot of people used to visit the farm, wishing to engage in, I suppose, nature restoration or climate action, or just do something to respond to all this news they heard, this negative news. And I suppose Hometree was a way of giving them an outlet that they could either contribute time or money to. At the time, it was a very crude model. We just plant native trees and that was it. That's what we did. But that's its origins. In 2021, we took it from a something that was done, from our bedrooms part-time into a professional. It's still a not-for-profit, it's a charity, it's a CLG, but it's something that paid wages and really took its job and its goals, its objectives seriously. So ultimately, our original focus, and it remains our core focus, was the restoration of Ireland's native woodlands. We have amazing woodlands in this country, or at least had. We still have remnants of them here and there. Like this is rock forest here in County Clare, incredible, really old pine woods. They think these pines never went extinct. They were the last of the Irish pines to survive, and they're still there growing on the limestone pavement. But really, our woodlands have been pushed to the periphery. They cling on within maybe certain estates, on islands, and cliffs and rocky areas, inaccessible areas, and maybe some in national parks like Killarney. But really, the stats are self-evident. I think I have a slide about them. Yeah, there's we've 12% woodland cover. The vast majority of that, around 70% of that, is non-native conifers. Some of it planted inappropriately. We're not in any way anti-conifer here. We really need well-run plantation woodlands for timber, but we've just 1%, 1.5% of the country is in native forest, maybe another couple of percent in hedgerows. But of the native forests we have left, most of our habitats, or at least our annex habitats, are in unfavourable condition. So they've got problems like overgrazing or invasive species. So the small amount of trees we have left have significant problems. The state acknowledges that we need more trees, and it's set targets. They want to get from our current cover of 12% to 18% by 2050. But to do that, we need to be creating around 18,000 hectares of new woodlands a year. But the target, the government have said, we're going to try to do 8,000 hectares a year. But actually, the last 3 or 4 years, we've only done about 2,000 hectares a year. Farmers are the main stakeholder, both of the state in terms of woodland creation, but also in terms of us as a charity. They own the land, they're the decision maker, and really they're the most important people in this equation of, can we create the woodlands we want and need for the future? Sadly, right now, they are not interested. That's a broad brushstroke, but I believe it to be true. Of the 2,000 hectares planted last year, farmers planted less than maybe 500, 600, 700 hectares of that. It was mostly actually planted by investment vehicles and non-farmers. So really, farmers have checked out. I think ultimately, it's forest woodland creation isn't culturally familiar, but they've also been let down. Many of them got into ash, and that crop failed, and the state were slow to kind of make amends to it. So just farmers don't really believe that forestry, they don't see themselves in the future of forestry in Ireland, and that's a real issue. And I think maybe that's where we hope we can play some role. So as an organization, we're probably almost a bit too broad. We do a lot of different things. We do own land. We own a couple of 100 acres of land, but we have no strategic ambitions to be a big landowner. Really, we see ourselves, the role is to give existing landowners, primarily farmers, the information or the financial incentives they need to get into nature restoration. Very much an evidence-based charity. We do lots of different things, which is why I'm in a nursery tunnel right now. We've got financing departments, we've got community engagement, we've got foresters, ecologists. There's a lot of people and different departments here now. And as I said, like where we started out on my hill, people being kind of central to what we do. So certainly long-term objectives are around, we're aiming to bring around 60,000 acres of land into restoration in the next 10 years. That's not necessarily 60,000 acres of woodland. Woodlands, especially in the west, don't exist in isolation on the landscape. They'll bog will bleed into a heath, will bleed into a woodland and back again. And that's what we imagine the West to be, a patchwork of farmed areas and wild areas for nature, as well as productive areas for timber. So I think our values are interesting and important to me. It's pioneering, nurturing, and pragmatic. We want to be pioneering. We want to be cutting edge, be that using technology or approaches to land management, but we also want to be caring, both internally to the staff who work here, but also to the communities we work with. And lastly is pragmatic. I in particular, I think, and everyone here, we're not ideologues. We just want to get on with doing the work and working with whoever we can get the work done with. We've had good meetings with the likes of forestry companies or with the new minister, Michael Eady-Ray, and we might come from slightly different perspectives, but I think ultimately we're both interested in the fate of kind of rural communities, and I think there's plenty enough space to work together on that. We've grown a lot. When we took it professional in 2021, we had a turnover of around 40,000. That'll be around 2 million this year, and I'd imagine it's going to keep going like that. Kind of roughly speaking, our income is about a third from delivering projects on behalf of the state, primarily the Department of Culture, Department of Ag. We also have good philanthropic support, and we also have a business model. We sell saplings, and and we do restoration at our own sites, which is supported by individuals or by businesses. So growing staff, I think we've close to 30 people here now. I already gave a rough breakdown of what they do, but finance, ecology, forestry, admin, etc. Sites around the west coast. Our area of interest is the west coast of Ireland, the uplands of the west coast of Ireland. There's nothing against the good land in Cork or Waterford or Limerick or whatever, but I suppose it's where many of us are from, and it's probably where farming faces the most uncertain future in the marginal uplands, like places like Knocknagoshel. So it's very much where it also has got quite unique ecology, the west of Ireland. It's a very wet place. The rainfall here is 3 times higher than it might be in parts of the east coast, and that leads to very interesting ecology like these oceanic woodlands or peat bogs. So that's our area of interest. We also see that there's a good opportunity here for communities in this area to embrace nature restoration in a way where they don't have to accept big trade-offs. I think if you're based in the Golden Vale, and you put half of your land into woodland or peatland restoration, that's a lot of your income from dairy farming or tillage gone. It's not, the calculations just aren't the same in the West Coast, where farming has tended to be marginal and ultimately subsidy driven in the last 2 or 3 decades. So what we see is that there's an opportunity for farmers to stay farming and integrate ambitious nature restoration into their systems in a way that benefits them and the broader people of Ireland. Couple of projects. We've the Wild Atlantic Rainforest Project. People in the last 10 years have been surprised to learn that we've these rainforests in Ireland, these oceanic woodlands where lichens and ferns live on every surface of every tree or rock. So that's a project aiming to restore pockets of them. We have work on our own sites. This is a restoration management plan for a peat site in Sligo. A lot of cultural projects as well. We have a whole community team here. This is one I ran last year called Ginshanicus. Ginshanicus is like the lore of a place, everything that makes a place a place. And we sent a group of 6 artists to different communities we work in on the West Coast to do something that a lot of nature restoration charities don't tend to do, which is ask local people first for their views on what the future might look like. What are their challenges? What are their concerns? What are their hopes about the future? And what are their ideas? So that's been an amazing project. Hopefully there's a film coming out about that soon, which I've seen a few times. I think it's really good. I could talk a lot about Ginshanicus, but it was a fantastic and is a fantastic project. This is actually where I am at the moment. I'm in this. They're the very same Scots pine here to my left, as you see on the left of the screen. So we have a native tree nursery, kind of born as much out of necessity than anything else. We actually couldn't get the saplings we were after when we started. We're very focused on local provenance, native saplings, and we were ending up getting hawthorn in from France, and that just wasn't kind of acceptable to us. And we're expanding the nursery a lot. We have a team of 3 in it and a full-time seed collector on the road. collecting rare seeds all around the country. The nursery, as it happens, is a great way of engaging people. It's a fantastic way for people to come in and learn and engage and do work. But as I said, our key kind of stakeholder is the farmer. This is a man called Sean Cronin in the Barlin Valley. And ultimately, you know, Irish people's history with land is so checkered. You know, people have a very close kind of emotional relationship with land, and they're not going to engage, I think, in activities that they're not familiar with or culturally aren't, you know, culturally acceptable, you know, maybe like rewilding or peatland, peat rewetting, you know, unless they really believe it's in their families and their community's best interest. And that's our job, to show them that we think that that it will be good for their area, good for their future, you know. And you know, yeah, there's certain realities of the west of Ireland. I talked about them already. There's, believe it or not, depopulation is still a reality. Well, at least was up till 2016, you know, in the most marginal areas. Some of the most important habitats in Ireland are here in the west, but also some of the poorest farmland. That's the map over on the far left. So as I say, we've done some good projects with the state. We've developed or delivered a couple of European innovation partnerships around working with farmers around getting trees onto their land. They've been very successful. You know, there really are loads of benefits of integrating trees into farm systems. You know, some of them, you know, obviously there's benefits around income, but there's also benefits around like animal husbandry, around well-being day to day. You know, lots of farmers are real nature lovers and absolutely love trees. You know, they just mightn't love them everywhere on every field and every farm. You know, so a lot of farmers, interestingly, are very interested in legacy as well. A lot of farmers had trees on their farms from their ancestors, and they like the idea of leaving trees for the people who'll follow after them. So yeah, a big bit of our work is drafting up kind of plans for farms to see where trees could be integrated. So an exciting project we've coming up is the Ivra Woodlands EIP. This is a lot of farmers in the uplands of the west of Ireland, for rules that I would say are fairly spurious, aren't able to access support for creating woodlands. You know, above a few 100 meters, they're told, oh, the trees won't grow straight, or more trees for that's fine if you're growing for timber, but many of these people are growing for nature or growing for other benefits, you know, water quality protection. It doesn't matter if trees grow fast or straight. It's what's important is that there might be a woodland there in the future. So the Ivra Woodlands EIP is working at a scale of around 800 acres to demonstrate pathways forward for farmers to create upland woodlands where they rightly belong. Across the water in a place called Kilcatran on the Beara Peninsula, we're working with 20 landowners about creating multi-habitat restoration plans centred around old pockets of sessile oak woodlands in their communities. So this is really where we want to be. Having hubs in areas. We actually have a new hub down in Kerry, in right next to Kerry College, near Glencar, that we're really excited about. But the hubs are great to bring people, to show them, to educate them on who we are and what we're interested in. But ultimately, we see the real work taking place out on land with communities and in support of communities. So Sinead and Scale, anyone who might want to contact me, my details are there, but Hometree we're anywhere you might expect to find us in terms of social media, or the website's there. And look, there's always bits and pieces going on around different parts of the West Coast that we're putting on events and stuff. If I know a lot of people on this call might have connections to Kerry. There's a community conversation there actually tomorrow night in the Climbers Inn in Glencar around the future of the nature restoration law, as well as there's a walk the following morning in our new site in Owlock West, near Kerry College. So that's it from me. And yeah, I think I've stopped sharing. I hope you can all still hear me.
Hi. Ray, that was absolutely fantastic. The amount of work you are doing is like brilliant presentation, truly like amazing to see how far you've all come in such a like small space of like small duration of time. We're going to open the floor up to Q&A, Ray, but I suppose like even just from myself, like beyond planting trees, like what role can biodiversity restoration play in tackling climate change?
Yeah, like I was up in Linan there before Christmas. I just happened to be up. I was actually for a Ginchanika's event, and the night I was staying, like unbelievable, that had been snow on the ground for about 10 days beforehand, and an unbelievable amount of rainfall came down. And whatever was going on with the soils in the area, they were sodden, and there was a lot of big mudslides and slippages and flooding. And, you know, it did huge damage to roads in the area. One farmer lost 50 or 60 sheep. And, you know, I think I'm not saying that we need to cover the hills of the west of Ireland in trees, but I think strategic implementation of rows of trees or pockets of trees to stabilize the landscape or protect infrastructure from such weather events, which are undoubtedly going to get more intense as time goes on. Yeah, I think there's a real strategic role as well as a role for them in terms of just nature restoration. I think there's a strategic role in holding water where it sits or slowing its flow down into catchments as time goes on, and trees and peatland restoration has a job it can do there.
Yeah. And like I know you had mentioned that, you know, you're coordinating with Michael Heatheray around forestry and things like that, but I suppose for yourself and for Hometree, what would be your priorities for the next few years?
Our priorities, I suppose, in some ways, we're always trying to find the balance between stability and growth, you know, where sometimes you get the feeling that we've kind of got out ahead of our feet and, you know, we need to kind of rein it in a little bit. And, you know, I think a few of us here are just really keen to be ambitious, you know, like I was listening to a podcast about 2 years ago where two people who'd spent their whole lives in grassland restoration were chatting, and they'd hit the highs of their area, and they were reflecting, well, what was the amount of grassland when you started? And they said less than 1%. Was what is it now? Still less than 1%. And I just said, I don't want to be in that position when I'm retiring. I want to say, well, we mightn't have done much, but we moved the dial, and like our target of 60,000 acres, like that's 0.4% of Ireland. You know, even it would be an unbelievable thing if we managed to pull it off, and still actually it's statistically not very significant. So what our priorities are, I think, just hit our targets, but also cultivate. You know, we won't do this on our own, and it's great to see the lads talking about the work in Knocknagoshel and other great projects, you know, like organizations like Burren Bio or Wild Atlantic Nature. Like, it really is going to be a kind of a societal or collective effort that's going to deliver the answers here. It's not going to be one organization. It's going to be an ecosystem of organizations all working towards the same goals.
Yeah, and you know what was really interesting? Michael from Ballyhar had actually gone as our first speaker, and he too has started doing agroforestry in on his farm,
Yeah,
and he's
and
like,
it's a
it's grand.
great like one of the big resistances to woodland creation amongst farmers is that, like, the perception of what it would have been historically is that the trees come in and the farming goes out, and that's, nobody wants to accept that they're the last in a kind of a long line of people who managed animals on the landscape. So I think what agroforestry allows or affords is the opportunity. Okay, I'll bring the trees in, get good benefits financially for them, environmentally, but I'll also keep farming, albeit maybe at a slightly reduced level. So no, I'm very optimistic about the role of agroforestry.
Yeah, for sure. And even he said himself, like, because he planted a certain amount apart, like that his animals are actually free to roam around them anyway.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So the space is still used, and like, sure, that's a great way to be thinking if you can do
Absolutely.
the two at the same time. Ray, I cannot thank you enough for the time that you've taken here today with us, and running through everything. Really, really do appreciate it.
No worries.
I'm going to close out the webinar. We are going to put your LinkedIn in our chat for anyone. I will just see one last time if nobody has any questions. I see one or two people. Lovely to see the organic nursery looking nice. and just see you in the Wicklow community conversation. So people are engaging, which is fantastic, which is what we want. So I suppose thank you everyone for coming to our webinar today and to the speakers. I'd just like to remind everyone of our survey and the importance of filling this out. It really, really does not take that long, and we need to have as much feedback and honest feedback at that as possible so that we can better plan for one, for future webinars, and two, for information gathering so that we can, I suppose, change things at the initial stages and not when they're too far gone. So our next webinar will be Wednesday, October 1st at 11 a.m. GMT. The link to register will be in the comments as well. We really hope to see you there. We have a fantastic lineup. We have 4 speakers that day. So thanks to everyone. We're going to leave this on the screen for a minute before we close out.
Thanks, Mel Fanula. Chat again.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Ray. And we'll also be sharing a recording of today's webinar, so it will be on our Food Community Practice platform. I would just like to remind everyone again, this platform is free to use. People are engaging on it. You can network with like-minded individuals. You can learn best practice in not only Ireland but other countries, what they're doing, that you can implement in your own community. So really, really do urge everyone to sign up to that platform. Super easy sign up, really quick. And also please fill in our survey. Thank you, everyone. It was great to see you all. I hope everyone has a great day. And for now, we're going to close out and we'll see you at our next webinar, October 1st.